I criticize evangelical apologetics a lot. Some people don't like that. They post comments on my YouTube channel saying things like, "Why do you always attack Christians?" No doubt if Jesus had a YouTube channel, they would be posting comments on his channel saying, "Why do you attack Pharisees and teachers of the law all the time? Why don't you instead focus on the Romans?" So, yeah, I'm not too worried about that kind of criticism. I've been involved in apologetics at least since 1994 when I took a university class in apologetics with apologist and philosopher Paul Chamberlain. Actually, William Lane Craig came to our class 30 years ago, and that's when I really got interested in apologetics. But you could say I've been involved in apologetics since the late 1980s when I was reading books by C.S. Lewis and John Warwick Montgomery and Josh McDowell and young Earth creationists. I actually gave a copy of Paul Ackerman's book, It's a Young World After All, to my high school science teacher. Yeah, that's another story. I evolved out of young Earth creationism by the early 1990s. But the main thing here is that quality control is just my thing. It's what I'm interested in when it comes to apologetics. I'm like a food safety inspector who comes around unannounced to restaurants and points out issues that could make the patrons sick. Hey, that grease trap has to be cleaned. That chicken has flies on it. There are mouse droppings in the rice on the buffet table. Managers look at food safety inspectors as the bad guy, but no, he's the good guy. He's protecting the interests of the restaurant by ensuring the quality and safety of their food. And that protects the patrons that they presumably would want to serve and to keep safe. And that's all I'm doing when it comes to apologetics. With that, oh, Happy New Year's. And I want to give you 5 New Year's resolutions for Christian apologetics. Like the food safety inspector, follow these resolutions and it will help improve the quality of your product for the customer. Okay, resolution number one, stop conflating your specific set of Christian beliefs and practices with mere Christianity. Christians disagree on all sorts of things, ranging from whether God is meticulously provident to whether evolution is true, to whether elective abortion is ethical, whether you should vote Republican or Democrat, whether human beings have free will, and even what free will means. Christians disagree about the nature of baptism and the church, about whether women can be ordained, about whether gay people can marry, whether Christians should be pacifists. Christians disagree about which model or theory best explains doctrines like the nature of election or the atonement or posthumous judgment in hell. On all of these issues, you are free to have and to defend your particular views. But please don't conflate your particular views with mere Christianity. Explain to people, help them to understand you're defending your take, your interpretation of these various issues, doctrines, controversies, topics, theories, and so on. But that's not the same thing as mere Christianity. Okay, resolution number two, devote more time to understanding opposing views. In fact, I'm going to say commit to devil's advocacy as being a way of life. In other words, be committed to steel manning opposing views. Do your best to see why people hold views different than yours. Now, that might sound radical, even dangerous. After all, you could end up changing or qualifying your views in the process. But that's just what it is to exercise the golden rule of intellectual hospitality. If you would want others to extend the hospitality of trying to understand your views with all the critical rigor that they can muster, you should do no less with your neighbor. Resolution number three, commit to the rigorous pursuit of truth as being the one non negotiable in apologetic work. In other words, your main job is not to produce content that supports your ministry or your church, but rather content that pursues the truth unvarnished. And that may well involve incisive criticism of your views, of your ministry, of your church, of your employer. Yes, that can be a scary thing, but sometimes scary things are what comes with the pursuit of truth. I say that in apologetics, credibility is the coin of the realm. If you genuinely pursue truth, you will be recognized as having credibility. The example I've given for years is in the film Miracle on 34th Street. The character Kris Kringle, or Santa Claus, is working as the store Santa at Macy's. but he will send parents to the opposing store, Gimbals, if they have a better deal on the toys that the children want. When the manager finds out about that, he's initially outraged at Chris Kringle. He wants to fire him because he's not sending customers to Macy's, he's sending them to a competitor. But then one of the parents comes up to the manager and he says, your store Santa told us to go to Gimbals. And that shows that you are an honest store and you've won a customer for life. In that moment, the manager realizes that honesty is the best retail policy for customers and customer service. Now, let's be clear, this is not manipulation of people. It's not like you commit to truth or ostensibly commit to truth simply because you want to use that as a tactic or a manipulative maneuver to win customers. Rather, you commit to truth because truth is what matters. And winning the credibility and the respect of an audience simply comes along as a natural byproduct of your commitment to truth. Resolution number 4, focus on producing quality rather than material that increases impressions, clicks, likes, shares, and retweets. Reject clickbait, the tyranny of monetization, and instead worry about content that will last and make a difference. Here's an example practically from my own life. So I once had a literary agent, and we parted ways because back in 2014, I decided I wanted to publish a book called Is the Atheist My Neighbor, where I criticize Christians who argue that atheism is always intellectual rebellion against God. And she said, there's no market for that book. Christians aren't going to buy that book. And she didn't think atheists would buy that book either. And for the most part, she was right. There wasn't a big market for that book. I sold copies in the hundreds, but ultimately it didn't matter to me. I wish it had sold more. I wish it had had more of an impact because I think it's a very important topic and I think the book was well done. But the main thing is, I had to be true to what I believe was important, not to what I believe would simply have the highest sales. And you should be committed to that as well. Make a difference where you can in a way that will last, not simply a way that maximizes engagement. And the last resolution, number 5, is to remember that character is always the best apologetic. If you can't play nice in the sandbox, don't get in the sandbox. Now, I'm not perfect at this, nobody is, but I think I am getting better. And particularly, I'm getting better at identifying trollish behavior. I want to be careful about saying people are trolls. Some people maybe just aren't aware of how they come across. But I am getting better at seeing when people are really not interested in a conversation and they're not open to receiving critical analysis. And when they engage with other people in a way that simply is going to maximize heat rather than light. And I don't have enough energy, and I suspect you don't either, to devote time to those kinds of people. So I would say redirect away from people that are going to bring out what is not your best self, and instead invest in conversations that will make a difference. Life's too short. Remember that social media algorithms want us to be perpetually outraged and indignant with one another, and that feeds the monster of engagement. But when you give into that monster and you end up posting insults and clown emojis, as I've seen apologists do in response to other people and your frustration with them, you have simply undermined your own apologetic. So those are my 5 resolutions in New Year's 2025 for Christian apologetics. Hopefully, you find them to be of some use.